Hi, this is Mending Mahogany. Thanks for tuning into my channel. Welcome back. If you're a return viewer, if you are new to my channel and you like what you're hearing, please be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and share. So today is going to be a little story time. And my story time, if I would give it a title, would be God's protection from unseen danger. So you'd have to be living under a rock if you didn't hear about the settlement that Diddy made with Cassie. And it got me to thinking, I don't know, it just got me to thinking, like, I don't know, I'm from New York, and in the 90s, Bad Boy was it. Biggie, Mary J. I mean, we could just count how many people were coming out of Bad Boy. So I kind of came up in that era where I was, that's what I was listening to. And I think everybody around the country was listening to that type of music. And so when this all came out, what happened with Diddy and Cassie, I was really shocked. I mean, I had heard all of the rumors, but I don't know, for some reason, I was like, why is this bothering me so much? I don't know these people. I'm not into that type of music or lifestyle anymore. But I believe the Holy Spirit brought back to my remembrance. Now, I'm not going to drop any names. And like I said, this is story time about God's protection from seen and unseen danger. This is not clout chasing or dropping names, so I'm not going to say any names. But years ago, back in the late 80s, in the early 90s, rappers and entertainers weren't moving around like they do today with bodyguards and entourages and riding in limos. They just wasn't making the kind of money that these artists make today. So it wasn't uncommon for you to run into them being out and about. So I recall being at a party in Queens, and I had met a particular rapper. Now, I don't know how famous he was back then, but he was known enough for me to be like, oh, that's so and so. So we was kicking it at the party, and he was like, yo, why don't we get out of here? And I was like, nah, I'm good, but it was nice meeting you. We hung out for a little bit. And then, I guess when he realized that I wasn't going to leave with him, he went wherever he went. And then there was another time that I met a member of a very popular 90s band at a park. They used to have something years ago. I don't know if they still do it, but it was called Queens Day. So everybody from Queens would be in this particular park. You would have everybody from the 5 boroughs just there in the park, hanging out, chilling. And I happened to meet the brother of a very famous 90s group. And we exchanged numbers. And later on that day, he called me like, yo, I want to get together. Can we meet up? And for some reason, it didn't align. And I was just like, nah, I can't. And I don't think it was any skin off his back because of who he was. You know what I'm saying? It's not like he probably didn't have girls lined up to hang out with him. So it was like, all right. So let me be clear. I didn't even have a child then. So my oldest son is 32. So this had to be maybe 35, 36 years ago that this is taking place. And that's what I'm saying. Like years ago, these rappers and entertainers, they didn't move around like they do now. Like now you can't even get close to these people. But back in the day, you would be out and you would see them. But when I started thinking about what happened with Cassie, and then there was more people that were coming out with stories about how Diddy had and another gentleman from a popular, I ain't even going to call him gentleman, another person from a 90s group had raped these 2 girls and then threatened them not to report it. And supposedly this is all in court documents, so I'm not making stuff up. But supposedly one of the young women said that her and Diddy had finished doing what they was doing. The other guy came in, held her down, and raped her. And then they seen them a couple of days later and they were physically harmed to not go to the police. So I was talking to my husband and I was like, God be protecting us from stuff we have no idea about what's going on. Because even though that happened so many years ago, it's just coming out now. And I'm like, Lord, I thank you for your protection. I have no idea why I didn't leave with this particular person or why, the other guy that I met from the group, our schedules just didn't align, but it just didn't happen. And I said, Lord, I thank you because we don't know people. We assume that we know people because maybe we see them on TV or we see them in a video, we hear their songs on the radio, but you don't really know people. And I was just like, God, I thank you for your protection because it wasn't anything that I was doing. I mean, I was a teenager, 19, 20, probably 18, 17, 18 years old. I wasn't thinking about my protection. I wasn't thinking about possibly being harmed physically. That was the furthest thing from my mind. It was like, yo, I met so and so and he wants to roll out. But I'm telling you, it was God's grace that I didn't accept the invitation to leave that party with that particular rapper I met. And it was God's grace that I didn't meet up with that other guy because you don't, when you're not in God, your mind is thinking, sometimes, especially when you're young, you think you're invincible. Nothing can happen to me. I remember I had a friend who had a motorcycle and we would ride on his motorcycle and he'd be going in and out of traffic, doing wheelies. And I'm on the back thinking it's so fun, not even thinking like, hey, this is dangerous. We could get hit by another car. I could fall off the bike. So you're not thinking rationally when you're young because, like I said, you think you're invincible. You think nothing can happen to you. But do you know that there's a God who looks out for us when we're not looking out for ourselves? So when that was brought back to my remembrance, I'm like, wow, God, I thank you for your protection. I thank you for watching over me when I was oblivious to the possible danger that I could have been in. And I'm not saying that, something like that could have happened to me, but what I am saying is I had no idea if something like that could have happened to me. But you know what? God was looking out for me when I wasn't looking out for myself. He made sure that certain things didn't work out and I didn't go certain places or be around certain people or put myself in certain situations. And I just thank God for that because he's so loving and he's so kind. And, a lot of times we think that, God doesn't want us to have fun or he doesn't want us to do this, that, and the other. But a lot of times God is looking out for us. He is protecting us. So I thank God for that. I was sitting around thinking like, wow, all of this stuff that is coming out now, 30 years later, was stuff that was happening back then. So you never know where danger is, and you never know the unseen danger that God is protecting us from. Because I do know people who have experienced sexual assault, and it is a terrible thing, and it's a thing that God has to heal you from. And it takes a while because, you could have um, trauma from it. Of course, you could have PTSD. I mean, you listen to stories about women who have been assaulted and attacked and raped, and it is something that takes a while to get over. And when I hear people, now I know people do stuff for money. I'm not saying that everybody who comes out with a story that they've been assaulted or raped is telling the truth. But what I do know is that it takes a lot of courage to come forward when something like that happens to you because you have to defend yourself. And then you put your dirty laundry out in the street for everybody to hear. Well, why was you over there? Why did you go there? Why were you wearing this? It's like, I feel like women who are hurt in that way have to explain things. The bottom line is a woman was assaulted and she should not have to explain why she went, why she was wearing that. It just should be like my husband said. My husband said, everybody who says they were assaulted isn't really assaulted. So I don't think it's right for everybody to assume that when somebody says that, it's true. But I disagree. I disagree. And of course, it depends on the circumstances. But this particular story that I'm talking about, we don't know the woman. It's not Cassie. It's someone from the 90s that this happened to, her and her friend. Her name is not out there. She is a Jane Doe. But I'm like, why would somebody want to dredge up a memory like that, a painful thing like that from over 30 years ago for a lie? Maybe she had the courage to come out after Cassie came out. I just didn't, I just didn't think that fit this particular situation. And like I said, it happened in the 90s and people wasn't moving around with bodyguards and all these expensive cars and things, because they just didn't have that kind of money back then. So the rappers and the entertainers were much more accessible to people just being out there. And a lot of them, they may not have been as famous as they were to become. So that was another reason why you could run into somebody just at a party or at a park, because times were different then. But I do know that people just don't bring stuff up like that from the past for a lie, because she had to put herself out there and explain why she was so free sexually. Because let's face it, rape is not about sex, because these guys can have their women lining up to have sex with them. So rape is about violence and control. So it's never about sex, because these powerful men, the Me Too movement came out and you're seeing all these actresses that had to fight off people and, possibly lay down, how they say lay down on the director's couch to get a movie. This is nothing new, but the Diddy thing kind of like was from my era, from where I grew up, from the music that I used to listen to. So that's why this story, I was more drawn to it, because it wasn't something that was abstract to me. It was something that I could relate to. So, like another time I had been living in a particular place, and I was kind of renting a room from somebody. This is, like I said, very long time ago, almost 30 years ago. And there was a guy who lived downstairs who was a relative of the woman that I was renting a room with. He was actually in law enforcement. And the lady that I was renting a room from, I believe she was out of town. And this one particular night, he came into my room. And he was a big guy. And, by this time I had a child. I think my son was like 1. And he was like trying to climb into bed with me. And I don't know how I got him to get out of my room. Or I think because he maybe was intoxicated, I was able to be like, yo, chill. My son is here. Just chill out, go back downstairs. I had to kind of coerce him to leave my room without feeling like I was rejecting him. Because, when you drinking, you ain't thinking. And, by God's grace, he left my room. I locked my door. And shortly after that, I left. So, God will bring things back to you, not to upset you, because that was so long ago, but just to let you know, I've been always looking out for you, daughter. I've always been there. Sometimes we feel like, God, where are you? When we go through things, God, where are you? Why is this happening? But never forget, God is always near. And like I said, I don't know what I said because it was a while ago, but what I do know is what I said. He got out of my room and I locked my door. But I do tell you that I know that if it had not been for God, that situation could have went another way. And when you think about all the things, all the seen and unseen danger that God has kept you from, you're grateful. You're so grateful. So that's all I had to say. That was just my story time because that was on my mind. But, we have to pray for people who find themselves in situations like that because it's not an easy thing to deal with, because it's embarrassing. A lot of the time the woman is blamed for what happened to her. And, it's just not an easy thing to go through because I do know people who have been through it. And we have to pray for people like that and pray that God would send them people who will, number one, believe them, and number two, support them, because it's not an easy thing to say, this happened to me. I went with the guy I thought I knew, and this happened. And statistics say that a lot of of college students are date raped their freshman year because you have a little more freedom. You meet people and you bring them back to the dorm. And how many times have you seen, like, oh, I'm just going to come by to study, and he got something else on his mind, and then boom, they end up raping the girl. So a lot of freshmen get raped, date raped, freshman year because they think they know people and they really don't. You don't really know the intentions of someone's heart. And then you could internalize that, like, why didn't I know? I should have known better. But, you think you know people and you really don't. But I just thank God for his protection and keeping me when I wasn't thinking about keeping myself. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I had to say. This is Mending Mahogany. Have a great day. I don't know. Sometimes when I'm talking, my throat gets really dry, but I believe, because this happens a lot when I talk and before I sing. I believe it's something that the enemy uses to try to distract me. Like, my throat gets a little, but I'm just going to keep talking and I'm going to keep working through it because it is what it is. But once again, this is Mending Mahogany. Thanks for tuning into my channel. Have a great day. Take care.